The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
On today's recording, so it'll be something that you could watch again in the future if you so like. We'll talk about how you can get access according. Thank you, Pam, for reminding me to turn the recording on. I do have a couple poll questions. I promise there's only 4 in total, and I'm going to ask 2 now. And this is just so I can get a feel for who is attending today, and I know how to kind of talk. So if you could just select one of the answers to the question, have you used the GP web client before? So if you could just click on one of those options, and I see we have almost everybody voted. Okay, great. Thank you so much. And actually, it's an overwhelming no. So I'm going to skip the second question because the second question was actually about which version. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll out. Thank you guys so much for answering that. And I'm super excited that those of you that are attending today are new to the web client because it's super exciting. Okay, this is our agenda for today. We're going to talk about what exactly is the web client. And then we'll talk about the difference, and we'll spend very little time on this since those of you who are live here in the webinar have not used the web client before. The difference between HTML5 and Silverlight, which is, well, we'll talk about that shortly. Then we're going to talk about what works differently in the web client. And this is where we're going to have a demo. We're going to actually get into the product and you're going to see it. And it's going to eliminate a lot of concern you may have that it's radically different. And so that'll be a lot of fun. And that's where we'll spend the bulk of our time. Then I'm going to show you things that do not work in the web client. And so that's important to understand. There are a few things that do not work in the web client. We're going to then talk very high level about a technical thing called the web client exclusion table. We'll talk about what that is and how you can get beyond it. And then I'm going to share with you what Ingevity loves so much about the web client and what I personally love about the web client. So let's start with what exactly is the web client. And I want you to think about your email. Most of us use Outlook as our email, and Outlook is installed on our machine, and we go in and we log into it and we work with it. For some people, the data that they're accessing is right on the machine, and for others, it's off in the cloud somewhere. Either way, we install Outlook on our machine and we check our email. Now, that is very different than perhaps some other emails that we use, that we actually will go into a browser and we'll access in a browser like Gmail or Hotmail or even Outlook.com. And sometimes Outlook, we go directly to the web client if you have Office 365. So we use a browser to access the application, which is installed somewhere, we don't care where, on some other site outside of our network altogether. And this enables us to use our email on our mobile devices, on our phones, on our iPads, wherever we are. We never have to worry about updating the software. It gets updated for us. So that is kind of what we're talking about. Now, upgrading is a different issue. We can talk about that at the end. But the fact that we use a browser to access that application, that makes it a web client type scenario. So what we're talking about today is instead of installing GP on our local machine, we're installing it somewhere else. It could be in our server room, or it could be in the Ingevity cloud or the Microsoft Azure cloud, wherever it is. You're just going to use a browser to access that data. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about the web client. Now, I know none of you who are attending live today have used it in the past, but prior to version GP 2016, GP used something called Silverlight to build the cloud out. And basically that meant that you had to install the Silverlight component on your browser to run. Now this was a Microsoft component. It still meant GP was built in Dexterity, which is built on the language C. So it still had that same kind of look and feel, but it would only work on a Windows machine. And in 2016, they opened it up to HTML5. And what that meant is we had a newer, fresher, better look. It runs significantly faster. And we could run it on iPads and Android tablets. And I love to joke, if your fingers are small enough and your eyes are good enough, you could even run it on your cell phone if you want to. Your choice. It's more resilient and it prints better. So it's overall a significantly better experience by being in HTML5. So that's really all you need to know now. Now, if you have people who are Mac lovers and think, I have to have a Mac notebook, I have to have a MacBook Pro, or whatever kind of Mac they happen to use, the fact that we're using HTML5 now, they could use their Mac to access GP. So back to GP's original vision that Macs and Windows machines can access the same data at the same time, we're back to that same original vision by use of the web client, which is super exciting. Now, if you look at the screen here, you see on the left the entry screen to what we're calling the rich client. And the rich client, or the fat client, is GP that gets installed on your machine. GP the way you're using it now. So you see the screenshot of my 2018. This was actually on my personal machine. On the right, you see that this counterpart, the same window for the web client. And in that one, I happen to be using Chrome. And you'll notice that it's identical. So I'm showing you this because I want you to see that the experience is the same. You're going to be able to transfer your knowledge. You're not going to have to learn a whole new product over again. There are a couple little hurdles you'll have to get through, and we're going to talk about those today. But for the most part, it's the exact same experience, and you're going to be able to work your way through it. Now, in the demo today, I'm going to be using, before I talk about what I'm going to use, I do want to point out another difference. In the rich client, your user ID is a SQL ID. And that means when you're in GP and you create a new GP user, you're actually creating a SQL user so that they have access to the data in SQL. In the web client, we use your Windows ID. So the same login information that you use when you log into your machine or to your network is the same login that you use to log into the web client. And this is important to understand. And if anyone who's been around me for any length of time knows that I constantly grumble about hackers and methods. I hate having to go to the pharmacy counter to buy Sudafed, and I hate having to keep dealing with all these different passwords and logins because of hackers. So it is a blessing for me that I could use my login that I use everywhere on the network to log into my GP. I find it easier. I find it stresses me out a little bit. That's just one less password I have to key in. Now today we're going to be using our product called, and again, I keep trying to jump ahead of myself. My apology for that. I wanted to show you an overview first. If I just look at the screen, I think I would be better off. Yes, go ahead, laugh at me. It's quite all right. I know you can't see the screens. I just did a whole big screenshot of each one of these. On the left, you see the rich client, and that's GP installed. And even though you can't read it, I know you recognize it. On the right, you see the web client. And it's the same homepage in both of them, right? It looks the same. It actually works the same. If you look on the left, you see a navigation pane that shows you all the different series. And then you have your desktop area, your home desktop right there in the front. And both of them are showing to-do lists, quick links, and my reports. Both the same information. The web client has a newer, fresher feel to it, a much more modern look to it. But it's the same information and it's laid out very much in the same structure. So I want you to just kind of feel with these few screenshots that there really isn't that big a difference between using the two. It's just the extra value you get on top of it. So it's totally worth making the leap to go to the web client. Now finally I get to talk about what I'm demoing. So I'm going to be using one of our products that we have customized, our SaaS version of GP called Power GP Online, as part of our demo. But I noticed I have that screenshot on the left, and on the right I have the regular web client. And you notice that they're very much the same thing. They look exactly the same. And I'm showing you these images because I want you to understand that what I'm showing you isn't smoke and mirrors for the web client. It is indeed exactly the same thing. The difference you're seeing on the screen is the fact that in Power GP Online, I only have showing one column of detail, and in the one on the right, the regular web client, I'm showing two columns. Other than that, they're exactly the same thing. Now I can tell the difference that the one on the left is 2018 and the one on the right is 2016. And that's because if you look closely, you'll see the little smart list icon in the blue, and I'll be demoing that in just a moment. The only other difference here is the fact that we changed the logo. So anytime there is a difference between what Power GP Online has versus the traditional web client, I will make sure and point it out for you so that you understand some of the differences between the two. But we're going to be using the same thing. So let's go ahead and dig in. And this is Power GP Online. So forgive me for looking on the left. I have it on my monitor on the left. And it's very similar to what you're used to seeing inside of GP. So we have this blue bar across the top. So you could see my user login. If I were to click on that, I have different options I could do. I could change which user, I could exit GP, and even switch which company. If I click over here on the date, let me click back on the user, I could change my user date, just like you're used to doing on the on-prem, on the rich GP. And this was one of the differences. In 2018, they put Smart List right up here on the blue bar, so it's easier to access. So that's Smart List. I also can click over here on the company and access any information or any other company within the system. So it works very much the same as your on-prem GP. Here in the middle area, we can customize the home page by clicking on the ellipsis button right there. And notice this window looks exactly the same. And I do have this set at a 2-column. I just don't have my screen resolution small enough to warrant it, and I don't have enough fields out here. But I can edit this to work any way that I want it to work. Now you are going to notice in the blue bar and down here, I'm missing that Microsoft Dynamics GP option, and I'm missing a menu. So I wanted to point that out. However, if I were to go into the quick links and add a quick links like you're used to doing on your rich client, and I go into change details, I can go to add, and I can add from that missing button anything that I want to add. So if I wanted to add Smart List, and I've already done so, I could add Smart List to my quick links, just the way I'm used to doing. And I could also add anything from the menu structure. So I wanted to point that out. Although you really want to get in the habit of working from the area pages and perhaps even from the navigation list. We'll be doing a little bit from the navigation list now. And I do want to point out we're going to have an upcoming webinar. We haven't set the date yet on using the navigation list as well. So I'm going to go into the purchasing series for just a moment, and you could see I see the area page just like I'm used to seeing in the rich client. But I'm going to go down into the vendor area for just a moment. And I'm going to find, let's find Beaumont Construction here. And I'm going to just double click on Beaumont Construction to open up the vendor maintenance window. And I want you to see, once again, it's similar to what you're used to seeing. Now, I promised I would point out any differences between Power GP Online and the traditional web client. And the only difference we added was we put in an import button for importing vendors in. But other than that, the window is exactly as you would see it in any install of GP Web Client. You're going to notice a couple of things about the GP Web Client. You're going to notice that the buttons are not here anymore. They've taken the buttons and they've made them tabs across the top of the screen. So all the same information is there. It's just located in a slightly different area. It's located as a tab and not as a button. That's pretty much the only difference. Now, a couple of times they have things in different places. So not, for the most part, they say all the buttons are gone, they're tabs. And that's true for the most part, but there are some things that are a little bit different. What I'm going to do is open up the sales transaction entry window and show you that. But before I do, I want to point a couple things out. I cannot resize this window, nor can I move it around. So the vendor maintenance window appears to be the only window I have. I cannot open another window either, or can I? I have to admit that when I first began using the web client, I went to Microsoft and I kind of whined, I can't open more than one window. And a lot of people have been doing that too. And that's because many of us failed to learn this important button right here. And once I learned it, boy, I became addicted. I love this button so much, and when I show it to people now, they're like, "Can we get it in the rich client, the desktop client?" And I'm like, "Nope, only in the web client." This is a search find button right here, and I'm going to click on that, and it shows me all the windows I have open, which means I can have more than one window open, and it enables me to look for things quickly. So I'm going to find the sales transaction entry window. I just start typing it, and there it is. So I'm going to open that up. And it's going to open that window on top of my vendor window. So now I have two windows open. And if I were to go back to the search button, I can see both windows and I could toggle between the two. So you can have more than one window open at a time. Okay, so now let me go back to the conversation about the buttons. You notice that normally in sales transaction entry, there are buttons across the bottom. They are not located in the tabs here. Instead, they're located in the Go To area. So I can get to all the same windows that I'm used to getting to by going to the Go To area. What is located in the tabs here is what we used to have some drill down windows on. For example, for customer number, there used to be a window here where we could drill in, look at the customer detail. Now that is a separate tab all by itself. Also, we had a drill down capability for an item number. So I've got the item number here, and if I click on it, I can get to that item detail window just the same. And from any of these, I can go ahead and open up the drill down window just like you were used to doing. And once again, that's going to open up another window just like we were using before. In this case, I closed it out, but now I have access to all of my windows here, similar to how you're used to seeing. Now, if I go back to my search button, I could also close all the windows if I want to. One more thing I want to show you about the search button, and this is like a little Belinda favorite of mine now. If I want to post, I'll type in the word series, and I can see all of my series posting at any time, or I'll type in the word master and get to master posting. So that's a little trick from Belinda on using the search window. I love that feature. I am super addicted to the search button. I don't care I can't move my windows around, because with that search window, I can toggle between windows and I can add new windows to what I'm looking at and even close them all at one time. Now, I wanted to show you something else. So let me come back in. Actually, we'll just open up Beaumont Construction 2. This time I'll use a little bit different method of opening that vendor card. I'll select the vendor and choose Edit. I do want to show you the Attach option. I just want to show you that this does indeed work. And there's method to my madness as to why I'm showing you that, but we do have ability to attach. So the functionality still exists within the system. Now I want to show you a little bit about printing. So I'm going to open up the Payables Batch navigation list, and I have one of my printing options right here. And on my printing option, I'm going to go ahead and tell it I want to print an edit list. Now, if I print to the screen and I leave it set as a Word template, it's going to prompt me on where I want to install or save the file. So there's where it's asking me about saving the file. And I could reprint it, again, by clicking reprint. I could tell it to refresh it if I want to, but now that I've printed that file, I'm going to go ahead and say delete. This time, if I print, I'm going to print to the screen, and if I choose the standard file, then it will print to the screen the way you're used to doing it. So it's very similar to how you are used to experiencing things in the desktop version or the rich client. All right, one more thing. Let me go through, and this time I'm going to go to the area page. I just want you to see how everything can look and feel pretty much the same way. So I'll go to payable summary, and let me calculate that, and I'll click on print, and I'm going to do the same here. We'll just print this one to the screen, and once again, you still get that same user experience that you were used to before. Now, that being said, let's talk about some of these things in specific that we just looked at. I pointed out there was no GP button and there's no menu bar. But again, we can deal with that because we have the search button, we have the quick links, and there's a lot of things we can do with that. I do want to point out, if you add something to the navigation pane, which you could certainly do on the Rich client, and you could do it on the web client, you cannot edit it once it's on the web client. So be careful about adding items to your navigation pane. And by that, I'm talking about if you were to add something over here like smart list favors or so forth, you're not going to be able to edit those easily. And if you need to edit them, someone's going to have to go to where you have the web client set up to clean it up for you. So I'd be careful about adding that in. So that's something, or anything else that you also might be interested in adding to the web client, that we could put in Microsoft ideas. And there's actually a place on the website where we can submit ideas, and Microsoft listens. That's where they get a lot of the new features. So if you have ideas, you could either send them to me or somebody else at Ingevity, or you could just ask me and I'll send you a link for it. And you could go in and see what other people have asked for and vote them up as well. So there's a lot of ways around it. All the navigation you're going to typically do from the area pages or from the navigation list as opposed to using the menu options, but that's perfectly okay. We pointed out that working with windows is a little bit different, so that's okay. You can't remove or move them around or resize them or have all your windows lined up, but you can use the search button and toggle back and forth between windows. And there's no keyboard shortcuts. Now, I did not point that out, so let's take a look at that now. I'm going to open up the vendor card once again. And if you're used to typing in like BEU and doing a Control L, you're not going to get anything. So one of the things that we've done as a result of that is we started using Rockton Smart Fill. So you might want to talk to us or your partner about getting Rockton Smart Fill, and it'll look for whatever will fill in the blank. And if there happen to only be one, then that's what you're going to end up seeing. You're not going to even get that pop-up list. And one of the really cool things about it is if I type in the word travel, for example, I'm going to get all the vendors with the word travel in it, the name, even if it's not at the first. And if I type in something that only one option makes sense, once I tab off of it, instead of getting the pop-up list, it actually populates it for me. So Rockton Smart Fill is one way around the no keyboard shortcuts. That's certainly something that can help. Now, I've talked a little bit about your data being in the cloud. So does your data have to be in the cloud to use the web client? Absolutely not. You can still take advantage of all of the things the web client has to offer, even if the data is in your server room. Doesn't matter where your data is, the concepts still are the same. And again, for a lot of those missing pieces, quick links is the way that you could go through and put them in. Now, missing pieces, I mean things that are in the Dynamics GP button, like adding the payroll tax or looking at the process monitor to see if anything's calculated, or looking up resource descriptions. You could put all of those right on your quick links button on your home page, which is completely editable from you at any time, and it's your own custom link. So certainly take advantage of that. Now, there are a few things that do not work in the web client. One of them are the tools you see listed on the screen. Modifier to modify the screens and report writers do not work within GP. Now, you can still use a certain number of reports, and we'll talk more about reports in just a few moments, but there's certainly a lot of things that you can do. These features do not work in the web client, either because they're just not friendly with HTML5 or because it doesn't make sense because of where the data is located. So there are a couple different reasons why they don't work, and the why isn't really important, but there are a lot of things that you can do and customizations you can make to your system to certainly protect your data. Now, there's some features that do not work as well. Account level security is one of them. Scanning documents for the document attach is another. That was why I made the point to show you that the doc attach still works, but you cannot pull it up and then click a scan button and scan it in. Although, fingers crossed, I have that on the ideas list. The copy paste, the journal entry, it doesn't work as well if you did that, and that's the single journal entry. Neither do the Word pieces. So the letter writing assistant or exporting Smart List into Word. Now, not that many people do snail mail anymore anyhow. So you could still export data to an Excel file and create a mail merge that way. And the Smart List export, it put it in a Word table anyhow. And if you're going to put it in a table, you're probably better off with an Excel table as it is. Named printers, it hasn't been used much in the more recent years as technology's improved. And account roll-up inquiry, and that's one of my favorite inquiries. And that's true of most of the people at Ingevity. So that was a little bit of a bummer. Notice we have an asterisk on that. We're going to talk more about that in just a bit because we're going to show you how to put it back. Now, there are a couple other things that don't work as well. Advanced financial analysis. This is the original report writer for financial statements. Most people have abandoned it for FRX and Management Reporter. If you're still using AFA, I strongly encourage you to go to Jet Reports. They have a free version. You could use Excel, and you could still have a lot of control over it without any additional cost. Table import doesn't work. Process server doesn't work. It doesn't get used much anymore anyhow, and neither does the VAT daybook report. Now, there are a couple things that only work when you're using remote desktop. And we point these out because if your data is in the cloud and you're using the web client for 99.9% of what you do, like writing checks and creating invoices and entering in payables and entering journal entries, there might still be a couple things that you would need to do directly in the GP Rich client. So for that case, you might want to set up a remote desktop. If you need Integration Manager, if you need Management Reporter for financial statements, or Excel refreshable reports. Now, the latter two I want to point out, the Management Reporter and the Excel refreshable reports, Jet Express, that free version of Jet, takes care of both of those needs. And I think I said the word a couple times, it's free. There is a paid version that does more, a lot more, in fact, but you can use anything that you need for Excel refreshable reports and financial statements using the free version. Now, as far as Integration Manager goes, our Power GP Online, you saw we had a couple of import buttons. We have like over 30 imports, I believe, and we have more slated. So can't wait for those to come out. I do want to ask another poll question, if you guys will so indulge me. Based on what you've seen so far, the web client is which one? Is it the same as Rich Client? And you could answer all that apply because there's only one that's wrong. It's the same as Rich Client. It's better than the Rich Client. It's nothing to be afraid of. And it's something I want to show my whole team. Or meh. So I'm going to let you guess which one is the wrong answer. And you can answer again, mark as many of them correct as you want. So it's something super exciting. And if I do nothing else in this session except let you see that it's really nothing to be afraid of, it's the same thing as the Rich Client. It offers a lot of advantages that the Rich Client could never afford, like working on the iPad. Think about that. You have a salesperson, they're at a customer site, and they need to look up an item to see if we have it in stock, or they need to look up an account, or they need to have an invoice emailed. No more calling back to the office. No more emailing someone from your phone. No more texting someone. They could take their iPad. They could log in using Safari or Puffin or Opera or Chrome or whatever browser makes them happy on their iPad. And they can connect to the data, and they could even send out copies of the invoices right away using the web client. So it's pretty darn powerful. Thank you guys for indulging me in that quick little vote there. Let's keep on going. So let's talk about add-on products, because now some of you are thinking like, okay, I get it. There's less overhead involved in having it. I certainly have a lot more flexibility on where I can access my data, and there's some improvements to it. So what about my add-on products? Because I have a lot of things that work inside of GP. What about those? So I'm not going to be able to answer the question for him individually. So what I could do is I could share with you questions. And of course, if you're one of our customers or partners, we'll be happy to help you do the research. Otherwise, these are questions you should ask of those third-party products. Have you tested it in the HTML5 client? If so, which features that you have do not work? And that's an important question to ask, because you already saw in GP itself, there were a few features that didn't work. So this is one way we have of getting to the nitty-gritty. I mean, is there something in there that's important that I need? And usually the case is not. And in a lot of the cases, for the ISV products, if they built them using Dexterity, they automatically work in the web client. So it's a good question to ask. Now, the next two questions, local install on a local network versus the hybrid in cloud and on-prem, these kind of really are a little bit different types of scenario. So depending on where your ISV stores their data or how they access their data, it may be completely irrelevant. So for example, Jet Reports that I've mentioned a couple times, it installs locally on your machine. It's an Excel add-on, so it has to be on your Excel. And because I've talked about the Mac, I do want to point out it does not work on the Mac Excel. They have in their paid version, they have a workaround for that, but I do want to point that out. So it's on your local Excel. Now, your data could be anywhere, so it doesn't matter where your data is. It doesn't actually touch the web client directly. It just looks at the data itself. So it's not really looking at GP, it's looking at the SQL data. So it's okay that it's, installed locally and going elsewhere. Kind of creates a hybrid environment, kind of, sort of. And BI360, Green Shades, another good example, and even Smart Connect, another good example. They have web components. So if you're using BI360 in the cloud, it can access your data in another cloud without having to worry about, having to go in and actively connect to the web client, meaning, once again, it goes right to the SQL data. So there's a couple things like that you could ask them, how do you connect to the data? Are we going to care about that? Is it really going to matter? So these are some questions that you should ask your ISV. Now, I know there are certain ones that I could answer yes off the top of my head. You saw me using Rockton's software, so obviously that one works. And, I've mentioned Jet a couple times. That one works as well. Frequently, we get asked about Macorma. Macorma just released a web client product, so we're super excited about that for the Micker. But there are many more that work, many, many, many more. So I encourage you to take this list of questions, and at the end, I'll tell you how you can get the slide deck. I encourage you to take this list of questions to your ISV partners and ask them, here are my questions about the web client, is something we're thinking about. And of course, you could always ask us for assistance as well on that. All right, so I'm going to talk high-level overview about something really techy. And this goes back to the statement that the account roll-up inquiry window does not work in the web client. Now, at Ingevity, we all love that window. And we're like, we can't think of a reason why it shouldn't work in the web client. So we did a little bit of research. And we found that there is this exclusion table. And the exclusion table is how GP knows which windows or which resources do not work in the web client, which ones are, that are in the rich client. And this happened to be one of them. And we're like, I wonder if we can go through and open it back up. And sure enough, we did. So for those of you who are techie, you could see it's SY05200. And for those of you who are not techie, at least you understand it really is the same GP. It's just the pieces that do not work or cannot work in the web client are hidden because they're in this table that says, hey, don't show this particular feature. Now, for those of you who are not techie, the next two slides, just kind of let your eyes glaze over. For those of you who are techie, we're providing some sample code so you could see how you can add things or remove things from that window. So if you want to hide the GP registration window or show it, this is the code to do so. And again, I don't encourage you to write it down from the screenshot. I encourage you to get the slide deck. And then here is the account roll-up inquiry window. So we've made that available again. So even though technically that's not part of the web client, we at Ingevity thinks it should be, so we've added it back in. Now I want to end by talking about what we love about the web client. We love that search button. I mean, I went on and on about it, so you know I love it. We love that you could run it on an iPad. I love that feature. There have been times where riding down the road in the car on the interstate, not driving, riding, I was able to log in and look at something and do something because I had my iPad with me. That single sign-on, big deal, big deal. Printing works better. It just is a little more functional. And one of the things we love for people who are already having data in the cloud and they're using remote desktop connection or some other source, when you save something to My Documents in GP Web Client, you're really saving it to My Documents. And by that I mean, if I use remote desktop connection and I save something to the My Document or My Download file, I'm saving it to the My Document file on that remote desktop connection, not the one on my machine. So when we save something to the My Document folder, it really is the My Document folder. If I save something to the C drive, I'm saving it to the C drive on my machine, not some other C drive. So that's something that we really love. And something that I didn't mention is reconnecting. And reconnecting, sometimes a glitch will happen and you get disconnected. Well, one of the cool things about the web client is when you log back in, if you were still connected from a previous session, you'll see it and you can connect to it. So sometimes we leave a process running, but we have to leave work, and normally you're sitting there like, oh, gotta wait to shut my machine down. If this is the case, you could close it out. It'll continue working. Come, get home on your iPad, open it up, reconnect, and you could see where the status is. Let it keep working if it needs to. So I love the ability to reconnect. And one of the things that we noticed, and it was only when somebody asked us about it, we started thinking, wow, it's been a couple years before we've had to go in and clean up stuck batches. Because of that connection ability and because of the way the web client works, I'm not saying it'll never happen. I'm just saying that we at Ingevity noticed, because we use the web client internally and have for years, we haven't had to deal with stuck batches in a long time. It seems to process better. So that's another thing. Now, me personally, I love that search window. I find it to be powerful. I like it, not just because I need to open up another window. I like it because I don't have to go click to get to it. Now, if you're someone who only goes in 10 windows, you might want to put them all on your search option or search field on the homepage anyhow. But if you're all over the place like I am, that search window is powerful. So the bottom line of what we're talking about today, HTML looks better, it's more responsive. When you have a new user or you get a new workstation, there's nothing that has to be installed to get GP to run. You could pick whatever browser makes you happy. It doesn't have to be Edge or it doesn't have to be Explorer. It could be Firefox, it could be Chrome, it could be, I don't know, whatever makes you happy. On my iPad, just for fun, I like to use Puffin just because I think it's a fun name. So you could use whatever you want to use. You could work on your iPad. New users are going to feel very comfortable and pick it up fast. Existing users, there usually is a bit of a comfort level curve. It's not a learning curve. Although, every now and then you're like, oh, I know that's a button, so I either look at a tab or look for the go-to. So it's going to be in one of those two places. But there's this comfort level one. And Chris Hopkins, our president, likes to refer back to when Office put the ribbon like on the Excel file, and it took people a while to get comfortable to it. I think back to when GP went from DOS to Windows, and to get from field to field, instead of going enter, you go tab. It really doesn't take that long to get over the differences between the two. I promise, I had to do the same thing myself, so I've been in your shoes. but there is a bit of a learning curve, or not even a learning curve, a comfort curve. And it doesn't take long to get over it. In Denver, a couple weeks ago, I was able to attend the Denver GPUG GP user group meeting. And the customer who was giving the presentation, happened to be the host of the meeting, was talking about their experience they had where they all went from this rich client to the web client. And she brought up, oh, you can only open one window at a time. That's the downside. That was the only downside she had. And I asked her if she used the search button, and she had not heard of it. So she fell into the same category as me, as just not learning about that button. So someone in her company said, I'll show it to her, and I know that'll change how she feels about that. But she kept going on and on and on. Every other sentence was like, it's so fast. It's so fast. It's so fast. So there are some tremendous things about it. So if you're using the rich client, give yourself a couple of weeks. Take the GP rich client off your machine so you can't fall back into that habit. Give yourself a couple weeks. I promise you, you'll be happy that you did. You'll be excited that you did, and it'll be comfortable. If you think, oh, I'll just use the rich client on my desktop, but use the web client on your iPad, it's always going to be awkward on your iPad. So make the commitment and go to the web client as a whole. I promise you, you'll be glad you did. Now, I do have one final poll question, and this is really more for us to do some informational things. I'm just asking if you'd like a copy of today's slide deck and a link to today's recording. So you could click yes or no. And if you say yes, we'll be happy to share that out with you. The truth is we'll probably share it out with everybody anyhow, but just thought I would ask just to be polite before we do that. We actually have, thank you guys for voting. I'm going to close that out. We have quite a few webinars coming up. One of them that I've already mentioned, we don't have a date yet. The lovely Amber Bell is going to be doing it. It's on using navigation list in GP. And the next one, I'm going to be doing an introduction to JET reports. I've also mentioned that on July 12th. We have optimizing JET reports for speed, and then we have some that specifically look at the product, hidden gems of distribution, ARAP. Using Power BI, I strongly encourage, if you've never heard of Power BI or you've never seen Power BI or you want to learn more about it in general, I strongly encourage the use of that one. And then more hidden gems of GL reporting and workflow. So we have 15 minutes. I did leave 15 minutes open. So if anyone has a question, feel free to either using the sidebars, ask the question by raising your hand, type in your questions, or enter it into the chat zone, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and pull up Power GP Online. Before anybody asks a question, just to kind of confirm that it works the same, I'm going to go back to the financial series and using the area page, not the navigation list, just so you feel comfortable, I'm going to key in a general ledger entry. Now, again, I promised I would just point out the difference between Power GP Online and the regular web client. We've done two things here. We have added the import button so we can import in entries, and we also brought in the description for the account number so you don't have to use the hide show button. So what I'm going to do is let's key in a batch. So you can see this is looking and feeling much like what you're used to. And we'll do one for prepaid insurance. Now, using the Rockton Smart Fill, I'm going to look up my account number. So I'm just going to start typing the word insurance. Yep, it'll look it up by the account number. So let's grab this insurance account, and I'm going to debit it $100. And again, you can see the description of the account there. And now I want prepaid expenses. And let's grab that one, and there's my prepaid expenses. So I'm going to credit that one $100 just so you can get a feel. So nothing too fancy. And I could, if I were to open up the batch here in Post, you got to keep in mind I have that window behind it that has that batch open. So I wouldn't be able to post, but I could go back in and close that one out, and now I can post. So that's another way I can post. and I'm not going to print my posting journal. And you could see it works just like you're used to seeing. So it's the same. It's comfortable. It's easy to use. I can't stress those enough. And it's all in the web. I'm using Chrome, and it doesn't matter what else I use. Okay. So beyond that, it looks like I've answered everybody's questions, or I've stunned you all into complete silence. If you guys would, in the chat, type in whether or not you were surprised by how much the web client is like the rich client. And you might want to type in a lot, a little, none, anything like that. Go ahead and type it in the chat. I want to know your chat screen works so that you guys could chat for me. So let's see how that is going. I see one person saying it looks the same. So that's great. It actually does look the same. That's something that's pretty cool and exciting. And because of that comfort hurdle you have to cover when you go into the web client, it just doesn't feel like it even, is a problem at all. So I love that feature. And again, if you're on a version older than 2018, the web client in 2018 does put Smart List up here. Before, you would have to either use the search button, which is certainly something that's easy to do, or you would have to put it on your home page and put it on your smart link. So having the search button up here is pretty powerful. I'm going to go ahead and just do one more thing here. I'm going to open up just my chart of accounts, which I believe I have a lot of them. So I might just max out at just 463. I want you to see that the Word button is gone, but I can still click on Excel and dump all of this into Excel. And the Excel that it's dumping to, there we go, is on my local machine. Hope I didn't press that twice. So it's on my local machine. And of course it opens on another monitor. Why wouldn't it? Yes, it looks similar but has a different feel. Yes, it does. Powerful, the next step forward. Yep, thank you, Tim. It certainly is powerful. And one of the things I love about it, here's that Excel file that's local for me. One of the things that I love about it is this modern look and feel that it has to it. It feels comfortable. And it feels very much like what we're used to seeing when we're dealing in Outlook, that we have this pane down the left side of the screen that we're used to seeing, and we can, open up that pane and get access to other things. So it really feels very comfortable. And it has a different feel, which will take time to get used to using. Yeah, that's true, Marilyn. It's what I call the comfort hurdle. So it just takes a little bit of comfort, but I promise you it does happen. Now, when I pull up the rich client for whatever reason, and I use it a lot, the rich client a lot, only when I'm building and developing reports, because I find it's easier for me to control the SQL and control the experience. And I typically only look at it to kind of look at the SQL data to see if what I'm building the report on matches what I'm having. And when I'm in there, I find myself getting a little frustrated at things. First of all, I really miss the search button. Second of all, I miss Rockton because I don't have Rockton on my little sample desktop to install. I kind of got addicted to that. But for the most part, it's the same. And it's just going to be that comfort hurdle you get used to. And once you get over that, the power that you have is absolutely amazing. Now, one question I didn't ask in my slide deck, and that I don't see anybody having now, is you can have a combination. So if you have, let's say that you're wanting to use it all local, you're not wanting to use it in the cloud. You can have some people using the desktop and some using the web client, although I really wouldn't recommend that. I'd recommend that you go ahead and push everyone to the web client so that the user experience is the same across the board. I just think sometimes that makes it a little bit easier for supporting, for example, when everyone is used to the same kind of scenario. But being able to access that from your mobile device, which in this case could be an iPad or it could be a notebook from home, is quite powerful, especially when you think about disaster recovery situations. I was in New York for quite some time, and when Hurricane Sandy came through, it became quite a difficult scenario for many companies. But those people who had their data in the cloud, they were able just to take their machine and work from home and keep on working. I hate to say working from vacation, but if you need to check on something from vacation, lying on the beach in the British Virgin Islands, you could pull up your iPad and you could check something out if you wanted to. And once again, if your fingers are small enough and your eyes are good enough, you could use your cell phone. I've pulled it up before just to prove you can do it. And I've used a stylus to navigate around and do some things, and it works. So it's certainly something you can try. I want to thank everybody for attending today. I really and truly appreciate your time and your effort. We have a great series coming up for the rest of the year. I think you should attend. Attending live gives you the opportunity to ask questions. I'm super excited about Amber coming in with a navigation list. I'm super excited about all of them, if you want to know the truth. I'm excited to show Jet Reports and Power BI to all of you. And I'm super excited to attend the hidden gem ones. I want to know, do people in my company know something I don't know? I've got to stay tuned and find out. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, my contact information is listed right there. Please make sure, if you have a question about the web client or anything today, make sure you jot a note in there that you saw today's webinar so that I will make sure you get that extra special attention that you deserve. And other than that, I hope all of you have a great summer and a great remaining of week. So thanks. Bye.